So I created a Socratic seminar using dot storming with a broad enough topic that it can go in many different directions with their discussion. The classroom format was set up where you have an inner circle with a student moderator where they were having a vocal conversation and discussion using the topics that the students wrote and voted on. Whereas the outer circle was having a virtual discussion, providing topic or talking points and also further questions for more in-depth discussion to the inner circle, while also having a completely separate dialogue on the website itself and answering each other's questions. So they were multitasking in their conversations, all getting that deeper meaning and understanding of the topic itself. And a lot of the takeaways were that they really understood examples and terminology of things, but what they really got were the different perspectives, which helps with their explanation and analysis of topics, which for me is really great with their writing and their ability to have that higher order thinking and verbalize or write down what's in their minds.
Ask my students in class to use GeoGebra to do constructions of centers of triangles, in-center, circumcenter, etc. And then use the piece of software to explore, come up with conjectures about those different designs or constructions, and follow up to the lesson after they had gone through and established some sort of idea of what was going on with the shapes. I used a discussion board as an exit ticket for my students to facilitate a discussion about where those different constructions could be practical in some sort of a real-life application. And I thought that would give them the opportunity to either research on their own where it would be useful or find ways that it would apply to something that interests them specifically, and then have a conversation through Schoology over the course of a weekend about those different applications. I thought it helped students to sort of discover where the transfer of knowledge would be on their own rather than me leading them down that path.
I used the fishbowl strategy to encourage discussion. In anatomy, I wanted my kids to write a good conclusion. That's a claim, evidence, and reasoning. We've talked about numerous times about what goes in a claim, what goes in evidence, and what goes in reasoning. Every single time, I'm going to have a handful of people that get it all wrong. So I wanted them to be able to be exposed to other people's claims and evidences, reasonings. I wanted them to see what a good conclusion looked like and what a bad conclusion looked like without putting anybody completely on the spot. So we did multiple small groups. It was about 5 people in a group. They took turns being in the center, and when they were in the center, they read their conclusion. And then they just kind of critiqued each other. They told each other what they liked, what they didn't like, what they needed to add, or, ooh, that's really good, I'm gonna add that to mine. And so I was hoping that they would be exposed, like I said, to a really good conclusion. And if I would do this again, I would definitely make sure that I did the groups, because I would like to group them to make sure that there was a really good exemplar of a good conclusion, and maybe a couple of bad, and so I wouldn't have a group with just all mediocre or all good or all bad. And so I think this could be used in other places where, because it's about revision and editing and fixing, and I think you could do that in English and history. I even think that you could use it if you're solving problems in math or physics or chemistry. They could each have a different problem that's kind of the same format of problem. They could work through it and maybe share how they worked a problem. I know not everyone works problems the same way. They could see how other people work the same problem and get the same answer. So I hope this helps you in your classroom.
I'm here to talk about the strategy that I submitted. I didn't have a name for it, so I just made up one called Leave Behind, and it's a basic strategy to facilitate discussion with the students and for them to create questions for students that will then be visiting that station that they've left. And so they're leaving a question behind for the next group. So what we did in APUSH is they had stations in the room in which they were reading different sections of a book about the Gilded Age, and the book is titled The Good Old Days. They were terrible. And so the first group read the section, And it was a jigsaw read, so that they're reading different parts of the section and then sharing together. And then they had to collaborate and create a question. It was an open-ended discussion question similar to the structure that College Board uses. And you could write it on a simple sheet of paper. We chose to do bigger butcher paper with markers so that at the end we could have a gallery walk and they could see each other's work pretty clear. So at the first rotation, all they're creating is a question. And they leave that behind for the next group. And so when they rotate, the first thing that group does is they read the question as a preview for what they're reading. They go through the same process. They read, share. They have to answer the question using evidence that they've read, and then create a new question that is examining the material in a different way than the previous group. And then they leave that behind and then rotate to the next group. And after that, you just rinse and repeat until they've visited every station and brainstorm different questions and answers. I find it beneficial because it facilitates discussion. It examines the material each time. When you visit the rotation for the fourth or fifth time, you're seeing the questions and answers in the preview period. So you already kind of know what's already been discussed, and it's a little bit more difficult to think about the material in a different way once other people have already created 4 different questions. And so it forces them to think about it a little bit more in depth with each rotation.